In the year 2500, humanity had reached a pinnacle of technological achievement: immortality through consciousness digitization. The corticostack technology allowed complete memory and consciousness storage, turning any physical body, any sleeve, into nothing more than temporary housing for the eternal human mind. Neo-San Francisco gleamed with promise, its towering spires wrapped in neon brilliance that cast long shadows over the depths below. From the luxurious high spire, where the immortal elite resided, to the commercial buzz of the mid-layer, down to the danger-ridden silent zone beneath the city's surface, it was a world defined not by geography, but by access to eternity. Dr. Mai Lin stood at her office window in the Global Bioethics Foundation complex, watching the play of artificial light against the perpetual dusk that now cloaked the earth. At 35, she was considered young for her position as the Foundation's leading technology ethicist. But her reputation for analytical precision was unmatched. Her slender fingers tapped against the transparent surface as her mind processed the information she'd just received. "Would you like me to display the full report again, Dr. Lin?" The gentle voice of Lin Chip, her AI assistant, broke through her thoughts. "No need," she said, turning from the window. Her office was minimal, containing only the necessities: a desk, 2 chairs, and wall-to-wall digital screens, currently dimmed to a soft blue. "I've processed the details. This altered stack technology. It goes beyond mere storage. It's consciousness manipulation. The Black Stack Syndicate, a notorious technology crime organization, had stolen experimental corticostack designs. Not just any designs. These were prototypes for altered stacks that could customize the very essence of humanity, upgrading intelligence and emotional capacity towards superhuman capabilities. The altered stacks represent a paradigm shift," Lin Chip continued. "They don't merely preserve consciousness, they enhance it. The ethical implications are unprecedented and potentially catastrophic," Mai Lin added, picking up her personal tablet. "Director Park wants me on this case immediately. We need to retrieve the technology and assess the damage before it spreads." Her tablet illuminated with a notification. Her new partner for this investigation had arrived. Than Vu, former private detective with a murky past connected to the Cortoblack network. Mai Lin felt a twist of unease. Working with someone from the criminal fringe wasn't her preference, but his expertise would be invaluable. When the office door slid open, the man who entered wasn't what she expected: tall and broad-shouldered. Than Vu carried himself with the wary confidence of someone accustomed to danger. His face bore the subtle marks of multiple sleeve transfers, micro scars around the eyes and neck that suggested his consciousness had inhabited different bodies over time. "Dr. Mai Lin," he said, his voice surprisingly soft. "I hear we're going to hunt down some very dangerous technology together." She studied him carefully. "You have experience with the Black Stack Syndicate?" A shadow crossed his face. "More than I'd like. I've tracked their operations for years. The altered stacks they've stolen. I've seen early versions in action. They don't just change what you remember. They change who you are. That's precisely why we need to contain this situation," Mai Lin said, gesturing for him to take a seat. "The Foundation has tracked the stolen technology to the silent zone. We need to infiltrate, gather intelligence, and recover what was taken before it hits the black market." Than's eyes narrowed. "The silent zone isn't just dangerous. It's a labyrinth, and the people who control it don't exactly welcome GBF investigators. That's why you're here." Mai Lin pulled up a holographic map of Neo-San Francisco's underbelly. "Your connections can get us inside. My authorization gives us the legal backing. Together, we might actually stand a chance." "And if we don't succeed?" Mai Lin's expression hardened. "Then we're looking at a future where humanity's very essence becomes a commodity to be bought, sold, and permanently altered by whoever has the most money or power." I don't think either of us wants to live in that world. Thunvu stared at the hovering map, then nodded slowly. I'll need weapons, and you'll need sleeve insurance. Already arranged. Mai Lin tapped her tablet, transferring the necessary files. We leave in 2 hours. The silent zone operates on its own schedule, and our intelligence suggests there's a major tech auction happening tonight. As Thunvu left to prepare, Mai Lin turned back to the window. Beyond the gleaming city, clouds had gathered, heavy with the promise of acid rain, one of many ecological burdens the world still carried. Like many technological advancements, immortality had come with unforeseen costs. Earth's resources had been strained to breaking point, supporting an ever-growing, never-dying population. Many had fled to colonize other planets, but Earth remained the center of political and economic power. The real question wasn't whether they could recover the stolen technology. It was whether humanity should have developed it in the first place. Linship, prepare a secure channel to Director Park. I want a direct line during the operation. Channel established. Dr. Lin, Director Park is standing by. The face of Elena Park appeared on the nearest screen, stern, with eyes that carried the weight of centuries. As one of the original architects of the Global Bioethics Foundation, she had overseen the development of the ethical frameworks that governed consciousness technology. I don't need to emphasize the importance of this mission, Park said without preamble. Our intelligence indicates that tech cartel leadership may be involved in the theft, if they're after altered stack technology. It suggests a coordinated effort to control the global corticostack system. Mai Lin finished. I understand the implications. Director, be careful in the silent zone, and watch Thunvu closely. His record with the private detective agency shows exemplary skill. But there are gaps in his history, periods where he disappeared from official records. Mai Lin nodded. I'll keep that in mind. As the connection closed, she gathered the few items she would need. Her identification chip, a neural interface earpiece to maintain contact with Linship, and a small defensive pulse emitter disguised as a bracelet. The world of 2500 made physical weapons largely obsolete. The real dangers came from digital and neural attacks. 2 hours later, Mai Lin met Thunvu at the transport hub. He had changed into darker clothing, practical for the shadows of the silent zone, and his eyes held a focused intensity that hadn't been there before. Ready to descend, he asked, gesturing toward a private elevator that would take them below the city's surface. As ready as I'll ever be, Mai Lin replied, stepping into the elevator beside him. The doors closed silently, and they began their descent into the underbelly of Neo San Francisco, where the bright promise of immortality gave way to its darkest implications. The silent zone didn't earn its name from quiet, quite the opposite. As Mai Lin and Thunvu emerged from the transport elevator, a cacophony of sounds assaulted them. Shouting vendors, the hum of illicit technology, the occasional crack of energy weapons, and the constant background drone of ventilation systems struggling to circulate the stagnant air. What made the zone silent was its absence from official networks. No digital surveillance, no legal oversight, no record of the transactions that occurred in its twisted alleys and makeshift markets. Here, in the shadows beneath Neo San Francisco's gleaming towers, humanity's oldest vices found expression through the newest technologies. Stay close, Thon murmured as they merged into the flow of foot traffic. And try not to look like a government agent. Mai Lin had changed into nondescript clothing, but she knew her bearing might still mark her as an outsider. She consciously loosened her posture, letting her shoulders slump slightly as she observed their surroundings. The market sprawled through what had once been maintenance tunnels, now expanded into a haphazard labyrinth of stalls and small shops. Vendors hawked everything from basic food supplies to complex technological augmentations of questionable legality. The air was thick with the smell of cooked meat, electrical burning, and too many bodies in too little space. There, Thon nodded toward a cross-section ahead. The tech markets are deeper in, That's where we'll find information about the stolen stacks. As they pushed further into the silent zone, the offerings became progressively more sophisticated and dangerous. Mai Lin saw memory implants that promised experiences from celebrities, neural accelerators that could temporarily boost cognitive function at the cost of long-term brain damage, and sleeves, human bodies, displayed like merchandise, their original consciousnesses presumably in storage or destroyed. The sight made her stomach turn. This was precisely why the GBF existed, to prevent human essence from becoming just another commodity. "Huh," she whispered as they paused before a junction. "Those sleeves, are they—" "Empty. Some are. Others contain temporary consciousness constructs, enough to make them function, but not enough to qualify as fully human under current laws." His face remained impassive, but she caught a flicker of disgust in his eyes. "The wealthiest buyers use them for specific tasks, then discard them." Before she could respond, he gripped her elbow, steering her toward a recessed doorway. "We're being watched. Act natural." The doorway led to a dimly lit establishment that functioned as a black market tech bar. Holographic displays flickered around the room, showing prices for various illicit technologies and services. Patrons hunched over drinks, their conversations muted by localized sound-dampening fields. Thon guided her to the bar, ordering 2 drinks with a gesture that seemed practiced. The bartender, a heavily modified human with optical implants covering half his face, slid the glasses forward without comment. "Don't actually drink it," Thon whispered. "Just pretend. I need to make contact with my informant." Mai Lin lifted the glass to her lips, simulating a sip while surveying the room. Through her neural earpiece, Lin Chip was scanning and analyzing as much as possible, despite the zone's digital interference. "Dr. Lin," the AI's voice came through clearly in her ear. "I'm detecting unusual neural activity patterns in the northeast corner. 3 individuals appear to be experiencing synchronous brainwave patterns, potentially indicative of shared consciousness technology." Mai Lin casually turned her head toward the indicated direction. 3 men sat at a corner table, their eyes glazed with the characteristic vacancy of deep neural connection. Small devices at the bases of their skulls pulsed with blue light. "Tha," she murmured. 3 o'clock. Neural sync in progress." He glanced over, then stiffened, almost imperceptibly. "That's not just any sync. That's a stack-sharing demonstration, likely using the stolen technology. Come on." He stood, moving toward the men with purpose. Mai Lin followed, her pulse quickening. They hadn't expected to find evidence of the stolen technology so quickly. As they approached, one of the men looked up, his eyes clearing as he disconnected from whatever experience the 3 had been sharing. Recognition flashed across his face when he saw Thon. "Vu? Didn't expect to see you back in the zone." His gaze shifted to Mai Lin, narrowing with suspicion. "Who's your friend?" "Someone interested in your new tech. Raza," Thon replied smoothly. "Word is you're demonstrating some advanced stack modifications." The man called Raza leaned back, studying them both. The other 2 men remained connected, their expressions shifting between ecstasy and pain in disturbing synchronicity. "Might be, but the merchandise isn't for general sale yet. Just taking pre-orders from select clients." He gestured at the connected men. "These 2 are experiencing a taste of what enhanced consciousness feels like. Shared sensory input, amplified emotional processing, memory integration across minds." Mai Lin stepped forward. "And the side effects?" Raza's eyes narrowed further. "Who did you say you were?" "I didn't," she replied. "But I know enough about corticostack technology to recognize experimental integration patterns. Those men are experiencing neural degradation even as they connect. Their brains are literally burning out pathways to accommodate the enhanced input." A tense silence fell. Thon's hand moved subtly toward his concealed weapon. Raza smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Impressive analysis. You must be from upside corporate or government. Before either could respond, the two connected men suddenly convulsed, their bodies jerking violently as blood began to trickle from their noses and ears. One screamed, a terrible, wrenching sound, before collapsing forward onto the table. "Neural cascade failure," Mai Lin said urgently, moving toward them. "They need immediate medical intervention." But Raza was already backing away, drawing a weapon. "You brought heat into my establishment. Vu, big mistake." The bar erupted into chaos. Patrons scrambled for exits or cover, as Raza fired an energy pulse that narrowly missed Thon's head. Mai Lin ducked behind a table, activating her defensive bracelet which projected a small energy shield. "Lin Chip, emergency protocol!" she shouted. "Track the neural signature of that technology!" Thon had drawn his own weapon and was exchanging fire with Raza, who retreated toward a back exit. The two convulsing men had gone still, their modified stacks still pulsing erratically at their brainstems. "Follow Raza," Mai Lin called to Thon. "I'll handle these two." Thong nodded and took off after the fleeing dealer. Mai Lin rushed to the fallen men, checking vital signs. One was already gone, his pupils fixed and dilated. Brain function ceased despite the still active stack. The other clung to life, his breathing shallow. She carefully disconnected the experimental stack attachment from the survivor's cortical implant, using her tablet to stabilize the man's neural patterns. The technology in her hands was unlike any standard corticostack she'd seen, more complex, with additional processing layers that seemed designed to override natural neural constraints. "Lin Chip, I'm sending you scan data from this device. Begin analysis and forward to GBF secure servers." "Transmission initiated. Dr. Lin," the AI confirmed. "But we have a complication. Local security systems are activating. The Silent Zone's autonomous defense grid has detected unauthorized GBF signals." Mai Lin cursed under her breath. They'd been compromised. She finished stabilizing the survivor, then pocketed the modified stack component and headed toward the back exit where Thon had disappeared. The narrow corridor beyond was dark, illuminated only by sporadic emergency lighting. She could hear sounds of struggle ahead. Drawing her pulsimeter, she moved forward cautiously. The corridor opened into a small loading bay, where she found Thon locked in combat with Raza and another man. Despite being outnumbered, Thon moved with practiced efficiency, his years of experience evident in every calculated strike. As Mai Lin prepared to assist, a notification flashed across her neural interface, a warning from Lin Chip. The modified stack she carried was emitting a tracking signal. The Black Stack Syndicate now knew exactly where their stolen technology was located. "Than, we need to go now," she shouted, firing her pulsimeter at Raza's accomplice. The energy burst caught him in the shoulder, sending him spinning to the ground. Than delivered a final blow to Raza, who collapsed unconscious. Breathing heavily, he turned to Mai Lin. "Did you get it? The modified stack?" She nodded, showing him the device. "But it's broadcasting our location. We've got minutes at most before this place is swarming with syndicate enforcers. Then we need to disappear." Thon grabbed Raza's access card from his pocket and approached a maintenance door at the far end of the loading bay. "This should lead to the old subway tunnels. We can use them to reach a different sector." As they hurried through the door and into the abandoned tunnels beyond, Mai Lin's mind raced. The technology they'd recovered was more advanced and more dangerous than even the GBF had anticipated. She'd seen firsthand what it could do, create shared consciousness experiences so intense they could literally burn out a human brain. "The question isn't just who stole this technology," she said, as they navigated the dark tunnel. "It's who developed it in the first place. This goes beyond standard stack modifications." Thon's pace never slowed as he led them through the labyrinthine passages. "You're right. The Syndicate doesn't have the resources to create something this sophisticated. They're just the middlemen. which means someone with far more resources is behind this. Someone with access to advanced research facilities and top-tier neurological experts. The tech cartel, Thon said grimly. They've been trying to monopolize stack technology for decades. The tech cartel, a consortium of the most powerful technology corporations, operating in the shadows of legitimate business. If they were developing ways to modify and control human consciousness on a fundamental level. We need to get this evidence to Director Park immediately, Mai Lin said. And we need to find out who's at the top of this operation. As they continued through the tunnels, the weight of what they'd discovered settled over them. This wasn't just about recovering stolen technology anymore. It was about preventing a future where human consciousness itself could be manipulated, controlled, and fundamentally altered by those with enough power and resources. The first stage of their investigation had yielded answers, but those answers only pointed to a conspiracy far larger and more dangerous than either of them had imagined. 3 days after their harrowing escape from the Silent Zone, Mai Lin stood in Director Park's secure conference room at GBF headquarters, presenting their findings to the Foundation's Leadership Council. The modified stack component they'd recovered was now contained in a secure analysis chamber at the center of the table, surrounded by holographic displays showing its internal structure. The technology is unlike anything we've seen before, Mai Lin explained, manipulating the holographic display to highlight specific components. It doesn't just store consciousness, it actively modifies it, breaking down natural neural barriers between emotion and cognition, memory and sensation. Director Park leaned forward, her expression grave. And the fatality in the Silent Zone? You're certain it was caused by this technology? Without question, Mai Lin confirmed. The victim's brain showed patterns of hyper-accelerated neural degradation. Essentially, his mind was processing so much enhanced information that it literally burned out his brain's physical infrastructure. Yet, someone is planning to distribute this technology commercially, added one of the council members, a tall man with the distinctive platinum sleeve marking of multiple centuries of consciousness transfer. Not just commercially, Thon Vu said from his position near the door. His presence at this high-level meeting had raised eyebrows, but Mai Lin had insisted. Our intelligence suggests a coordinated deployment strategy. The tech cartel isn't just planning to sell these modifications to the wealthy. They're developing a system to implement them on a mass scale. Director Park's eyes narrowed. What evidence do you have of this? Mai Lin nodded to Lin Chip, who projected a new set of documents onto the main display. These were encrypted in the modified stack's auxiliary memory. They referenced something called Project Omniskull, a system designed to deploy corticostack modifications remotely across existing neural networks. That's impossible, another council member objected. Stack technology requires direct neural interface. You can't simply modify stacks remotely. That was true of previous generations of the technology. Mai Lin agreed. But these designs suggest they've developed quantum entanglement pathways that can synchronize with existing stacks through standard update protocols. Most stack users automatically accept regular updates to maintain optimal function. If the cartel hijacked that system, they could potentially modify millions of stacks simultaneously, Director Park finished, the color draining from her face. Who's leading this project? Thon stepped forward, bringing up another file. That's where it gets interesting. Our sources indicate the project's chief architect is Dr. Noah Keller. A collective murmur passed through the council. Noah Keller was a legend in the field of consciousness technology, one of the original pioneers who had helped develop the first corticostacks. He had disappeared from public view nearly 50 years ago, supposedly retired to a private research facility on Mars. Keller's involvement changes everything, Director Park said. He doesn't just understand stack technology, he helped create it. If he's found a way to modify consciousness remotely... She didn't need to finish the thought. Everyone present understood the implications. We need to move quickly, Mai Lin urged. Our analysis of the communication protocols suggests Project Omniskull is in its final stages. The next phase appears to be a private demonstration for potential investors and partners aboard the Vector 9 cargo transport. Vector 9? The interplanetary shipping line? Asked a council member. Thong nodded. It makes strategic sense. International waters became interplanetary space in the expansion era. Aboard Vector 9, they operate outside Earth jurisdiction while remaining close enough to maintain stable quantum communications. Director Park stood. Decision made. Dr. Lin, you and Thon Vu will continue this investigation. Infiltrate the Vector 9 demonstration. Gather concrete evidence of Project Omniskull, and identify all major players involved. The Foundation will provide whatever resources you need. Mai Lin felt the weight of responsibility settle over her. What had begun as a technology recovery mission had evolved into something far more critical, perhaps the most significant threat to human autonomy since the development of the corticostack itself. As the meeting concluded and the council members filed out, Director Park held Mai Lin back. There's something else you should know, she said, once they were alone, save for Thon, who remained by the door. The Foundation has been tracking Noah Keller's movements for years. He's not just a brilliant scientist. He's become something of a zealot. His private writings suggest he believes humanity must transcend biological limitation to survive long-term. You think Project Omniskull is his attempt to force that transcendence? Mai Lin asked. I think it's worse than that. Keller doesn't just want to enhance human consciousness. He wants to fundamentally redesign it, to create a new definition of humanity according to his vision. Park's eyes held a warning. Be careful, Mai. This isn't just about technology anymore. It's about the future of what it means to be human. After leaving the meeting, Mai Lin and Thon retreated to a secure planning room to prepare for their infiltration of Vector 9. As Thon reviewed security schematics of the cargo ship, Mai Lin found herself distracted by thoughts of her brother. Min had been brilliant, a prodigy in neuroscience who had been recruited by one of the major tech corporations straight out of university. He had been working on early stack optimization when an experiment went wrong, resulting in catastrophic neural failure. The corporation had covered it up, listing his death as an accident. But Mai Lin had always known the truth. It was why she had dedicated her life to technology ethics, determined to prevent others from suffering his fate. You're thinking about him again, aren't you? Thon asked, without looking up from his work. Mai Lin started, How did you know? Your micro-expressions. They change when you're accessing deep memory. He finally looked at her. Your brother's death wasn't your fault. How do you know about my brother? Mai Lin demanded, suddenly alert. The details of Min's death weren't public knowledge. Thon hesitated, then sighed. Because I investigated it. Before I left the PDA, I was hired to look into a series of accidents at Neurosync Corporation. Your brother's case was one of them. Mai Lin stared at him, emotions warring within her. Anger at the invasion of privacy, hope at the possibility of new information, suspicion about his motives. What did you find? She finally asked. That the technology they were testing was a precursor to these altered stacks. They were attempting to enhance memory processing, but the modifications were unstable. Your brother wasn't the only casualty. The revelation hit Mai Lin like a physical blow. Are you saying that what we're investigating now is connected to what killed Min? I'm saying the underlying principles are similar. The desire to push consciousness beyond its natural limitations, without fully understanding the consequences. Thon's expression softened slightly. I'm sorry. I should have told you earlier. Mai Lin turned away, processing this new information. If the tech cartel's current project shared DNA with the experiment that had killed her brother, stopping it became even more personal. We need to access Vector 9's passenger manifest, she said after a moment, Her voice steady once more. The demonstration will be invitation only, which means we need appropriate covers to get on board. Thong nodded, seemingly relieved at her focus on the mission. I've already been working on that. The cargo ship will be taking on additional staff for the special event. Service personnel, technical support, security. We can insert ourselves there. No, Mylin said, an idea forming. We need to be guests, not staff. We need access to the main demonstration. That's significantly harder to arrange. The guest list will be tightly controlled. But not impossible. Mylin turned to the room's display. Lin Chip, access the GBF database on known tech cartel associates and cross-reference with high-net-worth individuals who might be invited to such an event. The AI processed the request, and moments later, the display filled with profiles of potential targets. There. Mylin pointed to one of the profiles. Jensen and Erika Yoshida. Industrial magnates with ties to black market technology, but no confirmed cartel connection. They're exactly the type who would be invited as potential investors, but might not be recognized by cartel leadership. Thon studied the profile. The GBF has detailed files on them. You're suggesting we impersonate them? Not exactly, a Lin Chip. When is Vector 9 scheduled to depart Earth orbit? In approximately 72 hours, Dr. Lin. And where are the Yoshidas currently located? According to their public travel schedule, they are on their private island in the South Pacific until next week. Mylin smiled grimly. So they would decline any invitation to the Vector 9 event. We don't impersonate them. We attend as their representatives. Their business empire is vast enough that they regularly send proxies to investment opportunities. Thon considered this, then nodded slowly. It could work, but we'll need flawless credentials and background information that will stand up to scrutiny. The Foundation can provide that, Mylin assured him. What we need from you is intelligence on the security systems we'll face on Vector 9 and protocols for the type of event we're infiltrating. As they delved into planning, Mylin felt a growing sense of purpose. This mission wasn't just about protecting humanity from technological overreach anymore. It was also about justice for Min and all the others who had been sacrificed in the name of progress. What neither of them could have anticipated was how personal the mission would become, or how deeply their own lives were already entangled in the web of secrets surrounding the altered stacks. Vector 9 hung in low Earth orbit, like an elongated metal island. Its massive cargo holds retrofitted for the evening's exclusive event. From the shuttle approaching the vessel, Mylin could see that certain sections had been transformed, their industrial exteriors now gleaming with the polished sheen reserved for the ultra-wealthy. Remember, Thon murmured beside her, his formal attire a sharp contrast to his usual practical clothing. We're representatives of the Yoshida Corporation, interested in bleeding-edge technology investments with potential military applications. Mylin nodded slightly, adjusting the neural interface disguised as an elegant earring. Through it, Lin Chip maintained a secure connection, despite the distance from GBF headquarters. Approaching docking sequence, announced the shuttle pilot. Please prepare for arrival procedures. The shuttle glided into Vector 9's private docking bay, settling with barely a tremor. As the airlock engaged, Mylin took a steadying breath. Their identities had been meticulously crafted by the Foundation, but they were about to step into a gathering of the most dangerous and powerful people in the solar system. The docking bay opened to reveal a reception area that defied its location on a cargo vessel. Holographic art installations floated in precisely calculated patterns, while servers carried trays of rare Earth delicacies and synthesized alternatives that cost more than most people's annual income. The guests, perhaps 30 in total, represented the elite of technology, finance, and black market enterprises. Ms. Kato, Mr. Hayashi, greeted a tall woman with the perfect features of an expensive designer sleeve. Welcome aboard Vector 9. The Yoshida Corporation's interest honors us. Mylene smiled with practiced ease, using the cover identity the Foundation had created. The honor is ours. The invitation was intriguing. Indeed. Harding Rasmussen will be pleased you could attend. Please, enjoy the reception. The main presentation begins in 1 hour. As the hostess moved to greet other arrivals, Thon subtly guided Mylene deeper into the room, his eyes constantly scanning for threats and opportunities. Rasmussen himself is here, he whispered. That confirms high-level cartel involvement. Mylene nodded almost imperceptibly, maintaining her cover as she accepted a drink from a passing server. We need to locate the demonstration area before the presentation begins. Linchip, can you access the vessel's schematics? Through her earpiece, the AI responded. Partial access achieved. Dr. Lin, I detect unusual power configurations in Cargo Bay 3, 2 levels below your current position. Likely location for technical demonstrations. We need a reason to separate from the group, Mylene murmured to Thon. Before he could respond, a new arrival drew the attention of everyone in the reception area. A tall man with silver hair and penetrating eyes entered, flanked by security personnel. Despite appearing to be in his 60s, he moved with the vigor of someone decades younger, likely the benefit of regular sleeve transfers and top-tier medical technology. Harding Rasmussen, Thon confirmed quietly. Rasmussen surveyed the room with the confident air of someone accustomed to commanding attention. When his gaze fell on Mylene and Thon, he paused momentarily before approaching them. The Yoshida representatives, he said, his voice carrying the slight accent of someone who had lived through multiple language shifts over a very long life. I must admit, I expected Jensen to send his chief technology officer. Mylene smiled coolly. Mr. Yoshida values my assessment of emerging technologies, particularly those with ethical implications. My colleague specializes in security applications. Rasmussen's eyes narrowed slightly. Ethical implications? Interesting focus for a weapons manufacturer. Even weapons have ethical boundaries, Mylene replied. Or perhaps especially weapons. A thin smile crossed Rasmussen's face. Well said. I think you'll find today's demonstration challenges conventional thinking about such boundaries. Consciousness itself is the final frontier, and frontiers have always been where the most ambitious make their fortunes. We look forward to the presentation, Thon said smoothly. I understand you've made significant advances in stack technology. More than advances. Mr. Hayashi, a revolution. Rasmussen gestured to one of his aides. In fact, why wait for the formal presentation? I'd be happy to give the Yoshida Corporation a private preview. Would that interest you? This was exactly the opportunity they needed. Yet Mylene felt a warning prickle at the back of her neck. Rasmussen's attention seemed too focused, his offer too convenient. That's very generous, she said carefully. We would be honored. Excellent. Please, follow me. As Rasmussen led them away from the main reception, Thon positioned himself slightly behind Mylene, his hand near the concealed weapon the Foundation had provided. Through her neural interface, Mylene sent a quick status update to GBF headquarters, ensuring they were tracking her location. They entered a private elevator that began descending immediately. Rasmussen stood in relaxed silence, but his eyes never left Mylene, studying her with unsettling intensity. You seem familiar, Ms. Cato, he said finally. Have we met before? I don't believe so, Mylene replied evenly. I would remember meeting someone of your reputation. The elevator slowed to a stop, opening onto a corridor that looked markedly different from the luxurious reception area above. Here, the industrial nature of Vector 9 reasserted itself. Metal walls, utility lighting, and the distant hum of massive engines. Rasmussen led them down the corridor to a reinforced door marked simply Lab 1. What we're about to show you remains strictly confidential, he said, as the door scanned his biometrics. The commercial applications are still being finalized, but the core technology, the door slid open. Well, see for yourself. The laboratory beyond was a stark contrast to the corridor, a state-of-the-art facility that would rival the most advanced research centers on Earth. At its center stood a complex apparatus, a series of neural interfaces connected to a quantum processing core, all surrounding what appeared to be a standard corticostack diagnostic chamber. But it was the man working at the main console who captured Mylene's attention. Tall and thin, with the intense focus of a lifelong researcher, he turned as they entered. Despite appearing to be in his 70s, there was no mistaking him from the historical archives. Dr. Noah Keller, the pioneer of corticostack technology. "Ah, Harding, you've brought guests." Keller's voice held the slight rasp of age, unusual in an era when most wealthy individuals transferred to new sleeves before experiencing significant physical decline. "From the Yoshida Corporation, I presume." "Indeed," Rasmussen confirmed. "They expressed particular interest in the ethical dimensions of our work." Something in his tone caused Mylene's instincts to flare again. There was an undercurrent here she couldn't quite identify. Keller approached them, his eyes bright with the fervor of a true believer. "Ethics are at the very heart of what we're doing here, Ms. "Kato," Mylene supplied. "And this is my colleague, Mr. Hayashi." "Ms. Kato." "Mr. Hayashi. What you're seeing is the culmination of my life's work." Keller gestured toward the apparatus. "The next evolutionary step for human consciousness." Mylene studied the technology, her trained eye recognizing components from the stolen stack they'd recovered in the Silent Zone, but vastly more sophisticated. "You're proposing to modify the fundamental nature of human consciousness," she said, maintaining her cover while probing for information. "Beyond simple storage and transfer." "Precisely," Keller's enthusiasm was palpable. "The original corticostack was revolutionary, but limited. It preserved consciousness, but did nothing to enhance it. Humanity has reached an evolutionary plateau, our minds constrained by biological limitations that no longer serve us." "And you believe you can overcome these limitations?" Thon asked, his tone carefully neutral. "Not believe, Mr. Hayashi. We have overcome them." Keller moved to the console, bringing up a holographic display of neural mapping. "Project Omniskull doesn't just store consciousness, it optimizes it. Enhanced cognitive processing, emotional regulation, memory integration across collective consciousnesses. The potential is limitless." Mylene stepped closer to the display, analyzing the neural patterns. What she saw disturbed her deeply. The technology wasn't just enhancing existing neural pathways. It was forcibly reorganizing them according to predetermined patterns. "This isn't enhancement," she said, momentarily forgetting her cover in her shock. "It's standardization. You're forcing diverse human consciousness into uniform patterns." Keller's eyes narrowed slightly. "A simplistic interpretation. We're establishing optimal neural architecture based on thousands of the most successful human minds. Why should each generation struggle through the same limitations when we can provide a superior starting point?" "And who defines superior?" Mylene challenged. A tension-filled silence followed her question. Rasmussen and Keller exchanged a look that confirmed Mylene's suspicions. They knew. "You know, Dr. Lin," Rasmussen said, dropping all pretense. "When we detected a GBF probe of our systems following the Silent Zone incident, I suspected they might send someone to investigate. I just didn't expect it to be the Foundation's leading ethics specialist." Mylene's hand moved toward her concealed defensive device, but Rasmussen was faster. With a gesture, security fields activated around both her and Thon, immobilizing them. "Please, no heroics," Rasmussen said calmly. "We have no intention of harming you. In fact, you're here at the perfect time to witness history. You're planning to deploy this technology globally, Mai Lin said, struggling against the invisible restraints. To modify consciousness without consent. Keller approached her, his expression almost sympathetic. Not without preparation. Dr. Lin, we've been laying the groundwork for years, introducing minor modifications through standard stack updates. The human mind is remarkably adaptable when changes are introduced gradually. Horror dawned as Mai Lin realized the implications. The update protocols. You've been using them to condition stacks for the final modification. Precisely, Keller confirmed. Tonight's demonstration is the culmination, proof to our investors that widespread implementation is not only possible, but inevitable. You can't possibly believe this is ethical, Mai Lin argued. You're violating the most fundamental right of humanity, the right to self-determination. Ethics evolve, Dr. Lin, Rasmussen interjected. Just as humanity must evolve, individual self-determination has led us to the brink of extinction multiple times. The future requires a more coordinated approach. Thin, who had remained silent during this exchange, suddenly locked eyes with Keller. You don't remember me, do you, Dr. Keller? Keller studied him with mild curiosity. Should I? NeuroSync Corporation, 40 years ago. I was security for your early experiments. Than's voice hardened. I helped cover up the deaths. Recognition flickered in Keller's eyes. Ah, Officer Vu, you disappeared after the project was terminated. After you killed those test subjects. You mean, Than corrected. Including Dr. Lin's brother. Mai Lin's head snapped toward Than in shock. He had never mentioned this connection. Unfortunate casualties in humanity's progress, Keller said dismissively. Their sacrifices contributed to the perfection of the technology you see today. Rage surged through Mai Lin, but before she could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the laboratory. Sir, a security officer's voice came through the communication system. We have a situation in the main cargo bay. GBF enforcement units have boarded the vessel. Rasmussen's expression darkened. How is that possible? We're outside Earth jurisdiction. It seems, Mai Lin said with grim satisfaction, that the Foundation anticipated your trap. Our neural interfaces have been transmitting everything since we arrived. Through her earpiece, Lin Chip confirmed. GBF tactical teams are on board. Dr. Lin, Director Park authorized emergency intervention based on the evidence you've gathered. Rasmussen moved quickly to a secondary console. Begin the Omniskull sequence immediately. Once it's deployed, jurisdiction becomes irrelevant. The system isn't fully tested for wide deployment, Keller objected. We need the controlled demonstration first. There is no time, Rasmussen snapped. Activate it now or lose everything we've worked for. As Keller reluctantly began the activation sequence, Mai Lin caught Than's eye. Without words, a plan formed between them. The security fields immobilized their bodies, but not their neural interfaces. Lin Chip, Mai Lin subvocalized through her neural connection. Execute Protocol Omega. Authorization Lin Prime 739. Protocol Omega acknowledged. The AI responded in her ear. Executing emergency override. Suddenly, every electronic system in the laboratory flickered. The security fields wavered just long enough for Than to break free, immediately launching himself at the nearest guard, while Mai Lin lunged toward the Omniskull control console. Chaos erupted. Alarms blared even louder as the ship's systems registered multiple security breaches. Rasmussen shouted orders as more security personnel poured into the laboratory. Than fought with the efficiency of his PDA training, creating a path for Mai Lin to reach the main console. Dr. Keller attempted to block her, but years of research had left him ill-prepared for physical confrontation. Mai Lin easily pushed past him, reaching the quantum core of Project Omniskull. The system was already initiating, its displays showing the early stages of a global deployment sequence that would target every standard corticostack on Earth and its colonies. Mai Lin's fingers flew across the interface, applying her deep knowledge of stack architecture to counter Keller's programming. "You can't stop it," Keller said, watching from where he had fallen. "The sequence is hardened against interference." "I'm not trying to stop it," Mai Lin replied without looking up. "I'm redirecting it." Thon had secured the laboratory entrance, holding off security forces with captured weapons. "Whatever you're doing, do it fast," he called. "We have minutes at most." Mai Lin's focus never wavered as she completed her modifications. Lin chip. Integrate with the Omniskull system. Target protocol. Restoration. Authorization. Full spectrum. Through her neural interface, she felt Lin chip's consciousness expand into the Omniskull architecture, using the very pathways Keller had designed for global control, to instead deploy a different type of update. One that would inoculate stacks against unauthorized modifications and restore any subtle changes already implemented through previous updates. "No!" Keller lunged toward her, but Thon intercepted him, restraining the elderly scientist with practiced ease. The laboratory doors burst open as GBF tactical teams finally broke through, led by Director Park herself. As they secured the room and detained Rasmussen and his personnel, Mai Lin completed the restoration protocol deployment. "It's done," she announced, stepping back from the console. Omniskull has been repurposed. Instead of standardizing consciousness, it's now protecting the unique neural signatures of every individual stack. Director Park approached, surveying the laboratory with a mixture of relief and concern. "Well done, Dr. Lin. Though I must say, this operation evolved considerably beyond your original parameters." "The threat was greater than we anticipated," Mai Lin replied, watching as Keller and Rasmussen were led away. They weren't just planning to sell enhanced stacks. They were attempting to fundamentally reshape human consciousness on a global scale. As the GBF teams secured the technology and prepared to transport it back to Earth, Mai Lin found herself standing before the Omniskull apparatus, the culmination of decades of research, both ethical and unethical. Its potential for both harm and benefit was staggering. "What happens now?" Thon asked, joining her after helping secure the prisoners. "Now we ensure this technology never falls into the wrong hands again," she answered. "The Foundation will dismantle the deployment system and carefully study the enhancement protocols. Some aspects might actually benefit humanity if implemented ethically, with informed consent. And Keller, Rasmussen? They'll face justice for their actions, including..." She hesitated. "Including what happened to my brother." Thon's expression softened. "I should have told you sooner about my involvement. I was assigned to security at Neurosync when your brother was there. I didn't know him personally, but I witnessed what happened after the experiment failed. I've carried that guilt ever since." "Is that why you left the PDA? Why you went into private investigation?" He nodded. "I couldn't be part of a system that covered up such things anymore. When I heard the GBF was investigating similar technology, I arranged to be assigned to your case." Mai Lin studied him, seeing past the hardened exterior to the ethical core that had driven his actions. "Well, I'm glad you were. We couldn't have stopped this without you." As they prepared to return to Earth, Mai Lin took one final look at the laboratory. The technology Keller had created represented both the greatest promise and the greatest threat of the Immortality era, the ability not just to preserve consciousness, but to shape it. The line between enhancement and violation, between progress and perversion, had never been thinner. The real work, she knew, was just beginning. 3 months after the Vector 9 incident, Mai Lin stood before the World Council as they prepared to vote on the Human Core Act, comprehensive legislation that would regulate corticostack technology and explicitly prohibit non-consensual consciousness modification. As the Foundation's lead ethicist, she had been instrumental in drafting the provisions that balanced technological advancement with fundamental human rights. The events aboard Vector 9 demonstrated the vulnerability of our most personal technology, she told the assembled representatives. Corticostacks have given humanity effective immortality, but that gift becomes a curse if it can be manipulated without our knowledge or consent. The chamber was silent as she continued, her words transmitting to billions of citizens across Earth and its colonies. The Human Core Act establishes three fundamental principles. First, that consciousness is inviolable. No external entity may alter the essential nature of a human mind without explicit, informed consent. Second, that stack technology must prioritize preservation over enhancement, maintaining the unique neural signature that defines each individual. And third, that all stack modifications must be transparent, reversible, and subject to ethical oversight. From her position at the back of the chamber, Director Park nodded approvingly. Beside her sat Thon Vu, recently appointed to the Foundation's new Technology Security Division, a unit specifically tasked with investigating and preventing stack-related crimes. The Council's vote was nearly unanimous, with only a few representatives from corporate-dominated colonies abstaining. As the results displayed across the chamber's holographic screens, applause erupted. The Human Core Act would become the new standard for consciousness technology throughout human space. After the session concluded, Mai Lin met with Park and Thon in a private conference room overlooking the Geneva skyline. "Congratulations, Dr. Lin," Park said. "This legislation will protect countless lives." "It's a start," Mai Lin acknowledged. "But technology always evolves faster than law. We'll need to remain vigilant." "That's why the Security Division exists," Thon said. "We've already identified 3 potential violations in development across different jurisdictions." Park studied Mai Lin thoughtfully. "Which brings me to our next discussion. The Foundation's leadership has unanimously voted to offer you the position of Deputy Director, overseeing our research and ethics divisions." The offer was significant, a recognition of Mai Lin's contributions and a platform from which she could shape global technology policy. Yet, she found herself hesitating. "I'm honored, Director Park, truly, but I've been considering a different path." "Oh?" Park's eyebrow raised slightly. "I've accepted a teaching position at the University of Technology Ethics. The next generation needs to understand these issues from the beginning, not just the technical aspects, but the human implications." Rather than disappointment, understanding dawned in Park's eyes. "You always were more interested in prevention than enforcement. The Foundation will miss your direct involvement, but education may indeed be where you can make the greatest difference." After Park departed, Thong lingered, watching Mai Lin as she gazed out at the city below. "Teaching suits you," he said finally. "You helped me understand the ethical dimensions of what we were facing. Students will benefit from that clarity." Mai Lin turned to him. "And you? Are you comfortable with your new role at the Foundation?" "More than I expected to be," he admitted. "After years operating in gray areas, there's something satisfying about having a clear mandate to protect people." They stood in companionable silence for a moment, their shared experiences having forged a connection that transcended their professional relationship. "I visited Min's memorial yesterday," Mai Lin said quietly. "For the first time in years, I felt like I could honor his memory without being consumed by anger. What we accomplished, the legislation, exposing Keller's work, it gives meaning to what happened to him." "Your brother would be proud," Thon said simply. "Not just of what you accomplished, but of how you did it, by holding on to your principles even when it would have been easier to compromise." As they prepared to go their separate ways, Mai Lin to her new academic post, Thong to his security role, they both understood that their work was far from complete. The Human Core Act was a victory, but the questions at the heart of stack technology remained. What defines humanity when consciousness can be transferred, preserved, and potentially altered? Where is the line between enhancement and fundamental change? Who should control the technology that makes immortality possible? In a private laboratory deep beneath San Francisco, far from government oversight, a team of researchers continued the work that Keller and Rasmussen had begun. The data from Project Omniskull had been fragmented and distributed before the GBF raid, preserved by those who shared Keller's vision of transcendent humanity. Though the immediate threat had been neutralized, the underlying technology and the ambition to reshape human consciousness remained. The ethical battle for humanity's future would continue, played out across laboratories, legislative chambers, and the very minds of those who had achieved a form of immortality only dreamed of by previous generations. The question was no longer whether humans could live forever, but what kind of beings they would choose to become in their endless existence. For Mai Lin, the answer lay in education and ethical guidance. For Thon, in vigilance and protection, and for humanity as a whole. The answer remained unwritten, a choice that each generation would need to make anew as technology continued its relentless advance. The age of immortality had only just begun, and with it, new questions about what it truly meant to be human.